So this is like take 100. But welcome back to, I guess, Gogo Nomi podcast. And I think today I've got Keabetswe Motlokwa with me. I think just on today, I would really like us to zone in on Kia, her life, also language, and I think just the intersection between how she's been able to even decide ukuthi she could do so many things and do them in so many different languages. But also just to anyone who's sitting ekaya who feels like they also need reassurance, maybe just around, is it okay, number one, as a woman to do like a whole lot of things? Is it okay to do them the way that you want to do them and not the way that other people dictate that you should do them? But I think number three, maybe, is it something that your guides want for you? Uguti, you must do it in that way, in that direction. And I think maybe putting it, Uguti, if you've never seen it before being done by anyone. And I'm not going to introduce Gia. I'll let her introduce herself and get into why I'm posing these questions to you guys first. Togoza Gia.
The pressure. The pressure. Dumelang, Tobela, Amsheni, Molweni, Sanbonani. Nengazinandi Fikia. Motlokwa. It shocks a lot of people, yes. I'm a Venda girl with a Pedi name. And I was born and raised Venda. I'm a multipreneur because I run multiple businesses that delves into so many different industries. I also run myself as a business. I am very multi-skilled. I'm a polyglot, which means I speak a lot of languages. And I'm just very excited about life. Very excited about life.
I think she's also a mom and a wife, and I think that's very, very important, because I also think a lot of people think, Uguti, you can't do all of the things Kia's just mentioned and be a mom and be a wife. And I think what I want to know is, how did you know you were even allowed to become a multipreneur and that you were allowed to do all of these things in all of these different languages?
You know, I grew up in like the rurals of rurals. Really? In Venda, in a place that even people who are from Venda don't know it.
Wow.
That's how deep, that's how far I come from. So I grew up in a village called Streda, which is in Jerere. And you can only imagine the limited opportunities and access resource to anything that we had. But I was raised by my grandmother, a woman who encouraged me. Like she was just, she made me believe I can do anything. And I think that's very important. That's a very important foundation, actually. I grew up as Vanabale, that people say Wapapa.
Really? You're so calm.
I'm telling you. But remember, in the villages, Papa means you dab into this, you dab into that. People love you. You are a people's person. I was playing chess, I was doing debates, I was anything you can think of. I was doing, and I was doing so well. And I realized the communities we come from don't take very kindly to
being
people
someone
like me,
being an all-rounder.
Yes, like you need to choose something and be good at it and stick to it, because in all of those things that I was doing, I was still top of my class.
Wow.
And I was the youngest person in my class as well. So my grandmother, from a very young age, has always encouraged me. She would always say to me, I hope you know and you can grow up to understand what your name means.
Please explain your name to us.
So my name is Keabetswe, which loosely translates to I am gifted. Ngesizulu ngiphakelwe.
So wabelwe.
Keabelwe. So it means my plate is, if we're sitting in a room, my plate is bigger. It has more, ki 7 colors. So I'm having 7 colors.
But you know, in Zulu, Ugwaba, it actually means sharing, right?
Yes.
So in your context, it actually means the multiplicity of things.
Yes. So it means I have been.
So it directly translates to the multipreneurship.
Yes.
You can have many names or many hands in a pot and be able to do it. But the beautiful aspect of it is that it means you're a sharer of those things too.
Absolutely.
It means you don't hold them like this and think they're just mine. We get to experience them.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I forgot to mention in my intro is that I am an award-winning broadcaster. I am an international voiceover artist.
Wow.
I'm a radio coach. I'm a voiceover coach. I love the idea of whatever it is that I can do, there should be 6, 7, 10 other people that can also do the same thing. No, please. I must get my flowers. No, so I guess it also ties into what my name means in isiZulu. Is that what I have been gifted does not stay here.
I love that. And you know why I love that? I love it because I think a lot of people think ukuthi when you're good at something, you are the only person in a room who needs to be good at that thing.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they don't like to share the table.
Yes.
They make sure there's less seats at a table and they don't share that. And I think it's so unfortunate because sometimes you realize ukuthi, there's that saying, a candle loses nothing by lighting another. And I think just by what you're saying, by way of introduction, you're explaining to us, Uguti, where Kia comes in is that, yes, she's there, she excels, but she leaves things with other people in those spaces, and those doors get opened by her being there.
Yep.
And for me, I think even if it was a takeout for the show, for me, it's that whatever you do that for other people.
Yeah, true.
Because that's how your name grows, actually.
And that takes me back to my days in corporate, right? Where I worked in corporate media, I worked in corporate finance, I worked in corporate government, and I think one of the things that I always encountered in those spaces was how I used to unsettle people. Because when you mention that people want to have less chairs on the table or they want to limit opportunities, for me, what I experience is even if the chairs are there and they're enough, they want to fill them with people who are less talented than them, less powerful, people who have less presence, so that they remain being the people that stand out, right? And me being a person with the type of personality that I have used to unsettle a lot of people because I was not on their bingo cards.
Is that wrong though? And I'm asking as a spiritually gifted person in corporate, right? Who understands that sometimes you're just bigger than the space.
No, it's not. It's the difference is, right? The difference is you get a you and a me who by nature, that's the sort of personalities that we have. Like you go in and you are bigger than the space, and there are people that want to be bigger than the space, but and because of that they want to sort of limit
the other people.
So they want you to come in and not know your power and not know your talent and not know what you're capable of.
So maybe my next question then is around corporate, really. And when does Kia decide, Guti Vele, I understand now, Guti, I shouldn't be here, and now I need to activate myself as Ukia in all these other different spaces? Like, when does that feeling come? Is it a knowing? What is it?
It's me walking into work to do the same thing that I was passionate about 2 years ago and feeling nothing.
Sure, that's painful.
Instead, it's almost like I'm floating. It's almost like I'm an empty can. That's just the wind takes you there. The wind takes you there. I didn't have the energy to stand up for myself. I didn't have the energy to want the bigger projects. I didn't have the energy to actually do the things I was really passionate about. And I almost felt like I'm caving in, and physically I started getting really sick because it starts affecting you physically. So I was getting sick a lot, and I said, this can't be something that
so the body does have a language, and I always say that to people. And I think it's so funny because So every time I go to the office, I come back with the flu. But every single time that I'm at home and I'm operating in this space, I'm always 100% okay. I could be in the office like 3-4 hours. My body will hurt. I will feel fluish. And I'm just like, it's the place. Because it can't be that when I'm out of there, I feel completely different. You know, I think the difference is I'm still obviously really passionate about what I do. And so I've stayed in that space. But I think maybe then where the conversation is beneficial to me is Uguti, were you forced out or did you walk out?
Yo,
You know why I'm asking
you're
this?
starting another one now.
I'm asking this because people think it's your decision
Yes.
half the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's your decision or if you kind of get forced out of these spaces and then you go into the progression of who you really are.
I'd say a bit of both, right? I'd say perhaps I take too much time making the decision, and then everything around me just starts forcing me out. It could be the conflict, you know, and you realize I'm not a person who
fights all the
fights,
time.
you know. It could be that people's energy towards you just changes, like drastically, and it's not fun anymore. You don't enjoy waking up in the morning to go to work. You don't. The paycheck is not even worth it, you know. And I think that happened in one of my jobs that I worked at for a very long time. It just started feeling not safe. Just started feeling not okay, and not safe as in I was in danger, but not safe for my well-being
and mental health
and
as
mental
well.
health as well. There were just so many things that were happening that made no sense. And in my last corporate job, I was in government. I was forced out because if I didn't leave that space, I probably wouldn't be alive.
Really?
Yeah, because it was a political office.
Yeah, I get it.
And I'm not a card-carrying member of any political party. I was brought in by the leaders, therefore they trusted me a lot, and it ruffled a lot of feathers, and it started being unsafe for both myself and my family. So I had to take the decision to say, this is it.
So I think then it brings me to a completely different thing, which I want to ask, right? Just based off this conversation, it means that you've also been gifted with the gift of voice, right?
Yeah.
And when do you then know where to utilize your voice and where to sort of like step back and say, Guti, maybe these conversations are not for me, so I won't even be in these spaces?
Yeah. This conversation is taking me back. You know, when you've been avoiding looking back at a certain time in your life, and then now it's facing you like this. I remember I was in a meeting with a group of departmental leaders, and I asked a very simple question that concerns the people of this country. And someone in a very high-ranking position looked me in the eye and said, Gia, you worry too much and you ask too much. And I realized maybe I'm in the wrong room. The room looks fancy from the outside. For anyone else who's looking, they look at me and they said, oh, she's thriving, she's doing well. But it was definitely not a room that was meant for me, because it wanted to silence my voice. It wanted to silence the things I care about. And I think there and then I went back to my desk and I drafted a resignation letter.
That is so scary.
It is.
And now that I guess you get to be on the other side where you make your own decisions and it's really all about Ukia, how much of Kia's voice do you feel now factors in all of these spaces? And where do we sort of like say, because of all the things that I've been through in the past, I now know the value of Kia's voice, and I'm also selective about the places where Kia is.
Yeah. I'm gonna go off script a little bit. There's a conversation I once had with you that stuck in my mind, in my spirit, for a very long time. You said to me, you need to charge for everything you do.
Of course.
You said, even if it's 5 rand, you need to charge for everything you do. And I think in that moment, for you probably thought she's underselling herself, she's she's doing so much for so many people, and some are just taking. But for me, that was when it clicked in my head that everything I do, everything I'm good at matters.
It does.
Because when you are naturally gifted with things, I think you don't value them as hard as people that actually work hard to have those skills. And for me, I realized I've literally been sitting on my own voice. I've been sitting on my power, and I've just been letting it float, and people are grabbing as it goes.
And you know what I say to people, right? The funny thing is, I said to Nkulu, I actually need to pay you for tech.
I would say no
before you arrive. But I think for me, I also had to have someone sit down with me and explain to me, Wuti, oh, Gogo Nomi, it's great. You don't really charge, you know, for certain things. But what you don't realize is that it's time that you've invested in that thing, and it's the time that you're not going to get back. So whenever you sit down with someone, even in a consultation, you must never look at it, Gogo Nomi, like you're charging them for the consultation. It's about the time, which you're not going to be able to get back. And remember, what that does for you is that it teaches you also to value time, because your time is quantifiable. Right? So even me as Gogo Nomi, that's why I'm hardly ever late. You know, like my mind opened up to the reality that if people pay me per hour, I can't ever really be late for the person, but I also expect the same exchange for myself. So if I'm gonna go somewhere and I'm gonna wait like 5 hours, as Gogo Nomi, I'm calculating with you, I could have made 2.5 in this time. Okay, actually no, I shouldn't be here. And as soon as I started like looking at it that way, I started realizing the value of my time, and I started teaching it to other people, because I felt that other people don't get it. They don't get you know, it's doing so much. It's a whole different conversation, of course, but I think it's an important conversation because it also leads to how then people treat you. Because you then have guided people with, you can't waste my time. And that's why I ask some of these questions sometimes, because I feel like it changes your whole vibration, right? Once you understand what frequency are you really on, you know?
And it's actually quite insane, because Nkulu and I were having this conversation when you were very far away from this room, and we're talking about how, you know, I had always been a person that lacked boundaries for a very long time. For a very long time, I didn't have boundaries. I would say I was a people pleaser in a way, and people love that. I helped people build their businesses that should have been mine, but I would happily assist in building that business because, you know, I'm good at this. You know, it doesn't take anything away from me, without realizing that my guides and God didn't want me to be a helper. They wanted me to be.
Okay. I want to break it down differently, right? You're the kind of people that when I have a consultation, I tell them you need to be selfish. And then people will be like, Gogo Nomi, but that's just not who I am. And I'm like, but sometimes this is why people think their guides are not doing enough for them. Because they put you in all the right places and all the right spaces with even the right people. But how you then decide to run the room is what makes your guides be like, oh my gosh, look at this person. What are they doing? You know? So I think even now, having this conversation, for me, it's a reiteration even on your part, Uguti. They are still saying you need to continue with being that person, because that's the person that's going to help Ukia win. Do you get me? And I think it's unfortunate because it's a learning that we have to do along the way. You know, but look at it this way, right? And this is why I like asking people about where they come from or whatever. guys, we all know that voice, yeah, your grandmother when they start to scold you, you know. So for me, whenever I'm making certain decisions, I actually always ask myself, what would she be saying like in this time?
Yeah.
And often that's where I get the better decisions done and made. But every time I ignore that voice in my mind, or ini, that's when I realize I make a lot of mistakes, and I lose so much, you know, and it's always so much of self, you know. So I think what I want to know, and I'm digressing a bit, but it's around language and just how you easily navigate through language, right? I always tell people how I've always been able to understand Tsonga. Have I lived with Tsonga people? No. But it's always been a language that's like so deeply rooted in me as a human. You know, I've watched my mom as well. My mom would sit with Nigerian people and understand what they were saying, you know, all these things. And I'd be like, what, how do you do that, you know? But then I've watched you and I'm like, what? She speaks all of these languages and she speaks them so well. I think the one is the why you do it like that, you know? But what is it we're supposed to learn from someone as diverse as that?
Sure. Okay, the why, I honestly don't know. It's honestly nothing I do intentionally, but as I connect with people, I generally just have a language that I gravitate towards. And sometimes I'd walk towards someone, greet them in a language just randomly, and they would happen to speak that language. And for me, it's never been an intentional thing, to be quite honest with you. I've never sat down and said, I want to learn this specific language. It really just happens for me, and I just happen to have a very flexible tongue. Like my tongue moves from as if I'm Tsonga to ukhuluma isiZulu, as if, you know. And for me, it's really just, I always say it's a natural gift that perhaps I was born with, but I don't remember ever sitting down and saying, I want to learn how to speak this language. So I don't have a why. It really just takes over from me. And I think because I've got such a great natural gravitation towards people, I also get very interested in I get very drawn in having conversations with people in their own language, because I feel like people are more honest, more open, when you speak to them in their own language. And yeah, so I don't have a why. It's just one of the things, I guess, you know. And I think what people can learn is not limiting yourself and not silencing that, because I've spent so much of my, especially my broadcasting career, trying to silence that, trying to not be all over the place, trying to not be the person on the radio that is switching from this language to that language to that language, because remember, the communities and the society we live in requires you to be a certain way. And the awards I've won, the awards I've been nominated for, all of them have been from content pieces where I'm speaking multiple languages. So it's almost like you try to run away from the thing that is supposed to make you you. So for me, I just look at it as, I hope anyone who looks at me can say, okay, I don't have to silence this little thing that I have.
I also think, like, for me, it's so interesting because even with like the advent of TikTok and its arrival, we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing people who will create a meal in their own language, and of course sometimes you can't even understand them, but we resonate with it, we're drawn to it, and we love it so much. So I think for me, you're definitely onto something, and I don't know if like the societal norm is ever something that we should be following, you know. I actually think for me, I always talk to people about this, Suguti. Like, as a gifted person, I really struggled with the box of African spirituality, you know. And because I've always struggled, I've always found myself outside the box. And every time I was outside the box, I found that I was doing the right thing, you know. I think it's also interesting that we're having this conversation because I'm about to do, I think, an interview that talks to when to know. Uguti, now you're following the voice of your guides and not something else. But I think then it's there where you suddenly do this thing that other people don't do and you're being awarded for it. You know? And then it's like, how? Can't I'm allowed to do this? You know? And I think it goes back to what I wanted to ask you earlier, Uguti. So when do you decide it's okay, cool, I'm just gonna do this?
Wow. I think Gogo is finishing all my thoughts today. She's taking them one by one. She was like, the thoughts are better one by one. So I just decided, you know, I just woke up one day because I had spent a lot of the beginning of my career really trying to fit in into every space. And I remember one day I was on the radio and I was doing traffic, and I worked on a radio station in Limpopo, and I was doing traffic, and the traffic looks at different districts in the province. And for those that don't know, Limpopo is the one province outside of Gauteng where we speak so many languages. And with Limpopo, it's the origin of those languages. So there's Chivenda, there's Xitsonga, Gonale Sepedi. Each of these languages, Gonale Ndebele as well. Each of these languages have different dialects as well. So when you look at Sepedi, you're looking at Batokwa, Gonale Sepedi sa Skukune, Gonale Sepedi sa Balobedu, you know. So everyone speaks this language, but everyone has got a different dialect as well. And as I was doing the traffic, I said, but who am I broadcasting to? Because if I'm doing traffic for the Vembe district, I'm speaking to the Bavenda people that are in the Vembe district.
You're schooling us, by the way.
Yeah, I'm speaking to the Bavenda people that are in the Vembe district. And there in the Vembe district, there's also Batokwa, there's also Magulu, there's also so many other people, there's some Tonga people there. And I said, okay, why don't I just integrate the vernac languages with each district? So if I'm doing Vembe, I'll mix, because I worked for an English radio station. And so if I'm doing Vembe, I'll mix English na Chivenda. So instead of just saying on the N1 towards Musina, there is a stationary traffic, I'll say Karadiba Korera ka N1 Iburiba Musina, there is a stationary traffic at this stationary track at this what place.
Getting goosebumps.
At this what place. So be aware of it. If I'm going to Giyani, I'll say Lokomi Famba on the R71 towards Zanini, Kuna Taraka 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll explain it in that way. When I come to Abedi, I'll also do the same thing to say, if this is 1, 2, 3, 4 that's happening. And it just started becoming a thing that I was so happy about. I mean, I was at a point in my career where I was like, I'm gonna give up on this whole thing, but that made me be excited. I was working on a big show, but I was excited about the traffic bulletin.
I'm even getting emotional. And I think it goes back to like where we were having a conversation before the camera was rolling to say, I don't think people understand how important it is for our guides essentially to have their voices heard. You know? And I think that's where then the difference comes in with all of us, where other people just see you as an entity, but you could be the one person who your guides have chosen now. Who see, you know, I'm going to come in and I'm going to show people who we really are, you know.
When they say we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, it's actually a reality. Like, we are walking as wildest dreams because they waited for generations and generations to have someone that they could put all of this in, because they knew this person is going to take it far. And
I think the signal that then comes to that person when it comes, which I think now it's time, is also like such an important signal that I think is the difference, right? I think we're all really, really gifted, but I think the difference with every single one of us is that there's people that know and then they do nothing. And then there's people that know and then they just do and they just do. And I think, you know, sometimes I'm always trying to encourage people, Guti, man, you know, get into this mode. But with time, I realize, Guti, with some people, they have this thing, and I call it a knowing, because you just know, you know. And then there's other people where they consistently like on the brink of, you know, and then you just never see the knowing happen. And I always ask myself these questions around, how did that happen? But this person was so talented, and for some reason they just could not get to it, you know. And I think this for me ties back then to the grandmother's voices, where because you can hear that person speaking in your mind, it's almost like someone is saying, go Sisi, go, you know. And it could be loud, it can be gentle, but you always just know
that it's and I'm, if there's one thing I've always been really grateful for, is how rooted I am in who I am. And I think what that has helped with is I have always relied more on the inner voice than I have relied on anything else. So when I can tell that the space is not working out for me, I walk. When I can hear that little voice says, okay, maybe push a little harder, then I push a little harder. And I think a lot of people I've encountered struggle with that part as well, not being able to, because when you're not rooted in yourself, you're easily influenced.
So that's what I wanna know. Like, you know how there's this saying that says, in order to go forward, you sometimes have to go backward, right? How important do you think it is then that we do know who we are and where we come from, and even the people that came before us, in order for us to move forward? Because I find that a lot of people that I find who don't know or hear that voice, the core difference is they don't know their past.
And, you know, I always refer or compare that to water, right? And for me, I always say, if you have tasted water from a well, it tastes completely different from the water from the tap. Water from the tap tastes completely different to water from the ocean. Bottled water doesn't even taste the same as per brand. So if you don't know where you come from, you taste all this water and everything shapes you. So you taste this water, all of a sudden, oh, okay, maybe this is the water that I should be drinking. And then you go and you drink the water from the well and you're like, oh, maybe this is the water that I should be drinking. But when you know who you are, you know, I can taste all these waters, but the water that I know is good for me. The water that I have been drinking since I was a kid is the water from the well, and you will know the difference in that taste. What that also does is it also helps you differentiate between things that are meant for you and things that are distractions, and things that you're supposed to just put your foot in and put it out, and then some things you're supposed to see them through the entire course. You know what I mean? So that's the analogy I always use, and it makes so much sense in my head every time I convince myself of, you know, hey, this water tastes good, but this is not my water. I'm only drinking this water because I'm in Namibia. You know. But
sure, I'm gonna ask you a very tough question, and it's not from me, it's from them.
Okay.
So when then does Gia wake up and realize that it's time for people like her to be documented?
I think it took losing my son. At the time that we lost our son, it was 2020. It was a transformative year for everyone. And before then, I was, even on social media, I was restricting myself a lot. I was posting maybe a bit of travel content here, but my feed was literally just filled with me doing radio, right? And after losing our son, I remember having a conversation with my husband, and we were driving back from laying him to rest in Limpopo. And he said to me, sometimes, he says to me, what just clicked in my head now is that what we thought would be the worst thing, he said, what I thought would be the worst thing to me has happened.
Sure.
And
so the worst is over now.
Yeah. So, and I'm still here. What do I do with this? Because when you think of the worst that could happen to you, you don't see yourself beyond it. And in that moment, it clicked to me, and I said, what do I have to lose? If I'm in if I'm in a season where I want to show people that I'm a good cook, I'm going to cook and put this thing up on social media. If I'm in a season where I feel like I want to dress up, I'm going to do that. If I'm in a season where I feel like I want to sell bags, I'm going to do that. If I'm in a season where I want to curate trips for people, I'm going to do that. If I'm in a season where I'm going to do everything I possibly can and do it to the best of my ability. So someone out there can look at me and say, if she can survive that and come out even better on the other side, then what's stopping me from trying? And for me, that's when my life changed. That's when I didn't care about fitting in anymore. That's why I didn't care about being on a platform. That's why I didn't care. And I always tell people, even when I get radio offers, I always say, what is it that this platform is going to do for me that I can't do right now?
Yes.
Because previously we used to rely on platforms for us to be relevant, but now
and to be recognizable.
Now I'm like, I still get bookings to MC big corporate gigs without being
on radio,
on a prime time slot. I still get booked to run events and do this without me putting events only on my feed. So why can't I just continue?
Yeah, you're right.
So I just started leaning more towards whatever is driving me at that specific moment. If I feel like today I want to post an outfit, I'm going to post an outfit and be happy about it. Tomorrow I'm going to post myself baking a cake for my son. And the other day I'm going to post my trips. So, guys, we're still going to... And my trips are still fully booked, and I don't post them every day or every week or even every 2 weeks. But it's because when you start operating where you are meant to operate, the stage is already there.
Yeah. I think I like that because, number one, you didn't even pause when you told that story. I would have been, but I also just think that's where for me there's also anointing, because a lot of people don't understand. People think Uguti anointing, I think it's something completely different. But I think now as I grow, it's understanding Uguti with God at play or with a bigger power at play in your life, things will just work themselves out, and I always say to people, the universe will continue to propel you forward, but it's also when you have the courage to know that it will, and I think it's such a different feeling, because sometimes we have the thing as people where I'm gonna, but you don't give the universe and God the room to actually show Uguti, now I'm standing in that place that you've created room and space for. So I think what I'm hearing is you're saying, Uguti, I finally understood my anointing and who I was, and so I stood in it and it helped me.
And you're reminding me of a conversation I like having with people in my life, or just people I encounter in general, who are in a bit of a crossroad. And I always say, you cannot, number one, say you fully believe in God if you don't ever let God be God.
Yes.
If you don't ever put yourself in a situation where you say, Mudimu, Mudimu kwena. Here is, you need to be able to step back and let God and your guides and the higher power take over. Because we like being in control.
We do.
You want to believe that you have your guides that are, guiding you, but you also want to overpower them. When they're telling you to pause, you're like, no, let me just push a little bit harder. And I always tell this to my friends who are in job spaces, and I'm proud to say I have 100% record. If I tell you quit, you quit and you're going to get a better job. But I always tell them, it's not as easy as ABC. It's not you're gonna go from this and then next month. There's going to be a period where it's a season of obedience where you need to be obedient. You need to just that's your job. You are not fighting. You are going to apply for those jobs. You are going to be qualified for all of them. It's not going to happen because I truly believe that there's a certain character development that you need to have for certain blessings
to happen and to unfold
and to thrive, because the blessings can happen and not thrive because you are not spiritually alert.
So I think for me, right, and at a very granular level, I love making these analogies. Like I always say, my Gobela always says, umntwana ne fanele ukuthi aphuze ibisi. Mawungamupha umntwana inestam angakaphuzi ibisi, umntwana uzokhameka. And umntwana ongadlanga inestam angeke akwazi ukuthi asukume ahambe. You know, and a lot of people take that for granted, but it's true. We see it in the defects that then happen in the kids when things aren't working out, and you're like, oh, malnutrition actually because they didn't get these stages. And I think as human beings, we also like that, right? But people never want to be in those seasons of waiting. They never want to be in the seasons of working hard. And also for me, the season of obedience, right? So obedience for me means like what I'm saying to you, it means that when I then interact with a Gia who knows more than me, am I stable enough to know what I should be learning from Gia and giving Gia the room to teach me the things that she's been sent here to teach me? And when I said to her, oh, I need your teachings, to literally even when I feel like she's being ridiculous, give it a bait, like nyatelege, so that I can learn the things that I need to learn from her, you know? So I always say to people sometimes, Guti, my Gobela and I have like a love-hate relationship. But the reason that I've stayed obedient to her is because no matter how big I think I am in my head, she always reminds me of the scholar. She always has a way of reminding me, Guti, there's still so much that you need to learn on the path. And she's, for that reason, been the only person who's been able to keep me that obedient to one person. And whenever I look at that, I'm like, oh, that's why I actually do well in this work, because there's someone that I'm always willing to go back to and listen to and bend for, you know? And I think a lot of us don't know how to do that because in our minds, we're so developed, we know so much.
Yeah, we've done so much, we've seen so much. And I think it also speaks to anointing. I think a lot of people interpret anointing as if it's meant to happen to them only. So when the anointing is happening next door, it doesn't sit well with them. With how, but Keabetswe anointing, and that's why you find in spaces where people are like, this person is too young to be doing this. This person just arrived at this workplace. How are they already on this position? Because when that anointing comes, it doesn't only apply to you, it applies to everybody else, and everybody has got their own moment where their anointing shines brighter than everybody else. And I think I think that's such an important thing for us to always keep in our minds, that, you know, even when you read the Bible, it will tell you when the time is right, the Lord will make it happen, or even I will qualify the disqualified. It doesn't only apply to you. It also does apply to someone else that you might look at and think, this person is not qualified enough for this. But who are you to decide?
I think in Zulu they have this saying, but so if you don't get it, what they basically saying is, Guti, there'll be celebration here, and then you move to the next place. Celebration here, and then you move to the next place. It can't be, Guti, in one place. There's always this celebration. No, you have to give others room and space for them to grow too.
And in our way, if there are celebrations kwabanye on the street, when you don't go because you want that celebration to be in your yard, then it goes to the next one. You are never going to have a celebration because a celebration requires a community, right? So it means when your moment comes, you won't even see it, because in order for you to see it, you are expecting that celebration, but you didn't take part in it. How are how are you going to have a celebration when you don't take part in other people's
I
celebrations?
think you're teaching me something there, because I have found, and I think it's in the traditional healing community, where it's actually so hard to do that.
Really?
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the time, outside of your own family that you've created, right? You sort of don't have the same values. You sort of are also taught spirituality in a different way.
Yeah.
And so, like, instead of me ever wanting to be in a group setting, I always actually remove myself
from. But what you are also not understanding is that the community you have built, your inner community, are there because why? Because you also go to their celebrations, right?
No,
so it could be 4 people, it could be, but there are people that don't know how to accept that it's someone else's time to shine at all. There are people that envy their own siblings. There are people that because
I always find that odd.
You know, like Nami, I never understand, but there are people that always feel like, but why is this not happening to me? Why is this not happening to me? To a point where even when it's happening to you, you don't see it.
Yeah.
Because you're expecting it to happen to you the way it happens to Gogo Nomi. Do you know what I mean? So it's for me. Yeah, this conversation is
we could actually speak the whole
this conversation has gone far. Manje, we are somewhere else.
But you know what? I think I've gotten what I've needed, and I think the people who needed to hear this conversation have also heard it. Ne? And you know what's funny? It rained, so I do know that it's time for us to wrap. But I think I'm just gonna tell everyone the beautiful story I was telling you when you got here before I wrap. So I was asking Ukia Uguti, is she related to the Mujajis, or rather the Rain Queen family, you know? And then obviously she's like confused. And I'm like, no, but it rained before you came. And every time those lineages come, I know Uguti it's going to rain before and it's going to rain afterwards, you know? And I thought it's just a beautiful thing to be able to even recognize people and their lineages like that, you know? Understanding Uguti, there's always going to be different signs that happen, even just to confirm whether I should be having this conversation with you on this day at this time. And I'm just so grateful to you. I'm grateful to your guides for giving us the opportunity. I think like a lot of people sometimes think like, what is she doing, you know? And I think for me, the thing that I'm doing is I'm also learning, number one, through you guys. But I think I'm being taught at a very different level by guides to really understand who they are, you know? So if someone is watching a Gogo Nomi podcast, I want them to understand the importance of the depth of the people they come from, the signs that those people come with. And Uguti, those people are always very, very intentional. Because I think, Tina, when we look at Amadlos, we've been told, Uguti, I love Bantu, they just take us all of the time, you know. And I want us to move away from that narrative, because I don't know if that's a narrative that's ever gonna grow us, you know. Till today, I know a few people, of course, but I've never seen or watched a grandmother who wants their children to fail. You know, I've never seen a great grandmother who wants their children to fail. And I think if people take nothing from today in particular, I want them to also understand, Uguti, our ancestors are saying you can do it all. You can do it all, and you can represent us in so many like ways, shapes, and forms. But at the core, you have to be happy.
Oh, that's important. Oh, that's important, because I was telling Mkulu earlier that I don't do things that don't make me happy. Like I'm tired, guys. Mina, I don't like being grumpy. And like I don't like anything that takes that away from me, because for me that's the core of who I am. And I think in doing it all, it's important for people to also remember that there's a certain level of discipline and obedience that you need to have in order for you to thrive in everything. Because you can do it all and it might not amount to anything because you are not listening to anyone. You're not listening to your inner voice. You are not, taking those breaks in between where you need to be grounded and you need to recenter yourself, because when you do so much, it also takes so much away from you. And if all you do is give out your energy, then you end up empty, you know. And when you were talking about the rain thing, I'm busy laughing because I'm like, it rained before I got here, and then it just rained now, and we're supposed to have wrapped, so I should have left already because we got disrupted like twice or 3 times. So it means by the time it rains now, I was supposed to have left. But thank you so much. This conversation
but thank
was
you.
so
I think
for me as well.
Me too, and I think, like I was saying, when I'm just saying to everyone, Uti, the message will reach the people it's supposed to reach. For me, I think just thank you to your guides and the people that have sent you here. I know it's taken a while to actually have this seating, but I think today the time was right. So God bless you, and I just hope that you understand the value of what you're giving out there. So if you didn't know, I hope now you know who Kia is.
You're going to make me cry.
Please don't cry. I'm gonna give you a hug.
You're going to make me cry.
I'm so happy.
Thank you so much. This was so beautiful, and the timing is also very perfect.